some spots, and it may also be getting to be late evening in some parts of the world. A very, very warm welcome to all of our friends who've joined us so far. I am thrilled to welcome all of you to this very first IC3 Live event. Adversity is the mother of inventions. IC3 has been such a close-knit community, and we have always gotten together at events in different parts of the world. But we realized that our community needed to be brought together virtually during this era, the COVID era, and we are grateful to the entire body of 300 plus IC3 volunteers, as well as all of the IC3 staff that have managed to put this together. We also realize that with this, we are able to reach many of you who we weren't able to reach up until now. And today's webinar, besides being streamed here on Zoom, is also being streamed on a YouTube channel and on Facebook. As you know, all of our content is going to be openly accessible. So if you'd like some of your teachers, your other colleagues to watch this webinar, this will also be available to you and accessible to you after today. I just, wanted to begin with introducing my panelists, and I'll invite all of them to turn on their videos. My name is Ganesh, and I was the first volunteer at IC3. I became the first volunteer, and we had several hundred volunteers follow. And I just had a very large meeting with a group in Africa yesterday. And we had our first meeting with the Sustainable Development Committee at IC3. So our volunteer body and our activities are rapidly expanding. And there are three people who've been very, very special, relevant, significant within the IC3 movement who are with me on this panel. I think it's fitting for these three people to inaugurate. And I have learned a lot from all of these three individuals, and my hope is that you will also have a chance to learn a great deal from them. Since I am now sharing my screen, I want to read a little bit of the formal bio, so I'll first introduce Mrs. Lata Vaidyanathan. Lata ma'am, as we call her, is an educationist par excellence. She has been a teacher and a school leader and a director for 43 years. And she has been inspirational, to say the least. Her accomplishments include, a lot of work that she did in Chandigarh at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. She was the founder principal at the Aikar School at Parvanu, and more recently, for 14 years, the principal of Modern School Barakhamba Road in New Delhi. She is also honored with the National Award to Teachers in the year 2003 by the President of India. And, she is very, very unique in that her contribution towards inclusive education of differently abled children is talked about a lot in our circles. Her focus on international education, the digital technology and sustainability is also worth mentioning. And she was talking about digital technology and online education way before COVID. And so welcome, Lata ma'am. Thank you for joining us today. Next, I want to introduce all of you to Mr. Vineet Gupta, who graduated from IIT Delhi in 1991. As an engineer myself, I am always fascinated by IITians, and I have been the recipient of not engineering education from Vineet, but many other great lessons on how to sustain and work through, with what IC3 is trying to accomplish. Vineet also is very popularly known as the founder and trustee of Ashoka University, and Ashoka has obviously done some very pioneering work. Vineet has been involved with Ashoka since 2007, and he continues to play an active role to help build different aspects of the institution. And Vineet is also the education co-chair at the PhD Chamber of Commerce. Vineet also is currently involved with a pioneering effort to reimagine technology education through Plaksha University. He is also the founder and trustee of Plaksha University. And the focus of Plaksha is really to solve big world problems, global problems, which are really big problems. And then finally, Geeta is from Bangalore, currently at the Legacy School, but Geeta is, one of those counseling legends. She is also the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, the Molly Abraham Lifetime Achievement Award winner at IC3. And, she's done 2 a.m.s, numerous nights. She has spent all her New Year's doing applications through a large chunk of her life, and she deeply cares about students. She's pioneered several new approaches within counseling, from the Presidency Group schools to Bangalore International School, now to Legacy. I really think that we're fortunate to have this entire group together. I'm going to get started in the interest of time. Our agenda today is really for me to share a very brief overview, which I will do in a couple of minutes. And then, each of us will speak for about 7 minutes or so. And then we've left a good chunk of 20 to 25 minutes for your questions. So please keep your questions coming in, whether you are watching on YouTube or you are watching on another platform. We're kind of collating all of the questions, and we'll try and take as many of those questions through the second half of the webinar today. I do have to congratulate everybody who's made it. You all need to really extend your arms, bend your elbow, raise it high, and pat yourself on the back, because at 7 p.m., only inspired, courageous, and 7 p.m. India time, of course, morning in the US, very courageous people who've been looking at the screen for 12 hours are continuing to look at the screen. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's made it so far. So, we'll then have each one of us speak, and you can see that here. We'll also have a case study that we'll have from the Legacy School and then the Q&A. So here's my take. And we'd love for you to take away as much as you can. All of us that are engaging students and parents throughout, whether we are on the school side or the university side, we want solutions. There's no value anymore in marinating in the problems. And one of our goals with this webinar is we discuss the problem maybe for 30 seconds, but discuss the solution for 30 minutes. And so we're really hoping that you'll take back some real key elements from this presentation that you will be able to use. If tomorrow morning you wake up differently and you are a different teacher or a counselor or a admissions rep at 9 a.m., and even if you brought 2 things that changed in the way you approach, we would say that we've been successful today. So first of these 4 steps, and I'm giving you a broad outline of what we'd all want to do as educators. We got to acknowledge what? The uncertainty of this situation. There is far too much craving for definitiveness. There is far too much craving for certainty. And, this is an uncertain time. There might be some value of going to an astrologer, but this is really not a time to really go to an astrologer and ask him or her to predict your future for ourselves or for our students. So, just acknowledging that this is going to be an uncertain time. It will remain an uncertain time for for a while, and that definitive answers would not be forthcoming. So that's the first step for me. The second step is for all of us to embrace, but also get our students to embrace the present moment. In this time, we have two choices. We have a choice of worrying about tomorrow or doing something with today. And really, as educators, it's so important for us to get all of our students sensitized on what can you do now, what can you do today, and to really embrace the present moment. My third step in this approach, so first is acknowledge, second is embrace the present moment. The third piece would be to really introspect. I think through this panel, we'd have a chance to introspect. I mean, there's some really special perspectives that all of them are bringing here today, but also for us to have our students begin to introspect all that lies ahead of them. They're going to live another 60, 80, 70 years. Their life is not going to be defined by the 3 months or 6 months or 2 years that in the present moment. So it's really important for us to get them to see the light at the end of the tunnel, get them to introspect that, what is this education? What do you really need to do? What are you preparing for? Are you preparing just for this year? What will happen when things get better? So should I be giving up on quality education because of COVID? Are schools really shut? Schools are probably already running. Schools are about learning. And right now, learning is happening even by being at home. We're learning all the time. So really introspect and have fresh perspectives, because the news is really depressing right now. And the only way we can help our students is to help them develop fresh perspectives. And then finally, the fourth step is to take some action. And that action would be investigation, thinking about a gap year, thinking about differing things, looking at what stuff to pursue online. So all kinds of guidance that we can give on what action. But we don't begin with action. We make sure that all of these things, so acknowledge, embrace, develop fresh perspectives, introspect, and then take action. Because a lot of actions that are happening right now are reactions. They aren't actions. We aren't responding right now to this situation. We are reacting to this situation. And that's kind of making life really challenging in a lot of schools for a lot of students and families. So that's my initial piece. Over to you, Vineet.
Well, thank you, Ganesh, and thank you. As usual, it's very inspiring listening to you. It's great to be back on an IC3 forum, speaking to school principals, teachers, counselors, students, and this is really. I mean, I actually call this a special time, right? I won't even call it a uncertain time or a. I really call this a special time. You talked, Ganesh, of definitiveness, us wanting to really look for definitive answers in this time. And, the first thought I wanted to leave on the table is that life anyway doesn't offer us definitive answers, right? Life is full of uncertainty. I mean, I have not come across anybody who can predict life with full certainty. What is going to happen in a year? What's going to happen in 6 months, or what's going to happen in 3 years, whether it's school administrators, students. I think none of us have had definitive answers ever, right? So life is full of uncertainty in some manner. COVID has only added some more, right? I wouldn't even say a whole lot more, maybe a little bit more, right? So I think to think of COVID as a phenomena that has really created huge uncertainty puts us in a zone where we stop creating and we stop reacting, I mean, to use your phrase. So, I mean, really to look at COVID as a phenomena that's put some uncertainty on top of what is already there. So I think the moment we get present to that reality, we start creating from what is present, right? And which brings me to my second point, that treat this moment as a pause. Treat this crisis as a pause. It's a great time to think, to invest in yourself. I speak to so many students at Ashoka who are now graduating, and I think the class this year, whether it's from school or from college, is the one which is grappling with the most questions, right? Whether students who are moving on from 12th class to college, and in case of Ashoka, students who are moving on from college now to professional careers or for higher education abroad, it's not very different. But I think that's the category of people who are grappling with most questions. But in one sense, it's also time to take a pause. You can, and I'll come to some of that in my last slide, but to think about your options in a manner to say, look, this is the time when I'll invest in myself. I'll be open to any sort of option. I don't think we have to be in any sort of hurry. And especially students who are in class 9, 10, 11, or even younger grades. This is like a great time to reinvent yourself, to immerse yourself in learning, in activity, spend time with family. My elder daughter studies outside. She's not been home for the last 3 years. And one of the joys of this lockdown is for the four of us to be able to sit down and have dinner again. It's been such a joy. So rediscovering some of those joys which we often get, we get lost to in our daily schedules is something which I've really found special. Ganesh, if you can also sort of enter and bring forth the 5 points. Now, this slide is more for counselors and counselors who deal with students, but also for students. One of our missions, I've always felt that your college education or your school education has to prepare you for life and not just a career. I've always looked at career as an outcome coming out of your preparation for life. And I do believe that a liberal arts education, and the one we sort of champion at institutions like Ashoka, is one which prepares you for life and not just for a career. I do believe that classroom teaching is not going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. If you ask any student who's been learning online for the last 2 months, they are dying to get back to the classroom, right? They want to be with friends. They want to mingle. They say, okay, this online works well to a certain extent, but we really want to get back. So, but I think what at least I'm getting present to, there is a whole alternate world of learning which we had not explored enough. While classroom is not going anywhere, but this whole world of online learning is outstanding. It has so many opportunities to offer. There are lots of things that it does well. It puts us in these forums so well. We are speaking from maybe 5 different cities, and the participants are from another 50 cities. So great interactions, great learning. But I think my second point for career counselors especially, there is also a plethora of information. There's just too much availability on the internet to be able to guide students on what content to use. Where are some of the best online courses? Is it Coursera? Is it edX? Are there some other courses available on a Harvard site or a Cornell site or a Brown site? For my younger daughter, she's also has summer vacation now. And I was trying to navigate what's the best course she can do over the summer. And I can tell you that I thought I'm in this, I counsel students and I deal with students, but it took me 4 days and maybe 30 hours of research before I could even start to get a handle around which course she should do, right? Because there's so much availability. But I think the outstanding part is there is great content and great learning available, and career counselors should really be at the cutting edge of being able to develop those perspectives for their students. I think the whole world of online learning is something, and I think COVID has only sort of accelerated that. This trend was here for the last 7-8 years. But I think that's the new world of opportunity that we are present. Developing attitude as a key determinant to success. I am fundamentally of the view that attitude defines your altitude in success, your altitude in life. Grit, determination, perseverance, self-control. key determinants to success. And anybody on this panel or anybody in the audience will agree to that. And for a long time, for the longest time, schools and colleges have been about really imparting knowledge, content, knowledge. Attitude was thought of as something that will develop on its own, either through extracurriculars, or often it was thought that maybe it's genetic, right? I mean, some people tend to have this grit determining which comes from genes, or it's. But I think enough research, and Professor Angela Duckworth from the UPenn, who's sort of leading this whole movement, enough research now shows that attitude can be developed as a formal process. And I think developing key attribute traits in students continues to be fundamental, and COVID is only demonstrating that. If more than anything else, it is demonstrating the importance of resilience. Again, the fourth trend, data and digital literacy, will rule. Again, COVID is demonstrating that. If we see the debate going on today, it's as much about the virus as it's about data. How many cases? When is the curve flattening? And the predictions on the crisis seem to be more accurate coming from data than from biology, right? So, and this is not just COVID alone. Whether you look at social sciences, you look at agriculture, you look at business, data. I think all predictions, all analysis, all research is become empirical and data-based. So students early on, and I would encourage that for every student to be as comfortable with data as possible. Digital literacy, again, your comfort. This is not about programming, but your comfort. Even if you are a creative person, your comfort to be able to deal with new mediums, being creative in a digital format, being able to communicate in a digital format. I think these things are going to become far more important. I mean, the good news is that your core skills of reading, writing, and analytical ability are not going anywhere. And I believe that if you can read well, you can write well, and you can analyze well, that's 80% of the battle won in life. So if counselors, schools can continue to focus on reading, writing, analytical ability, and then add a dose of data and digital literacy, I think students are prepared for life and not just a career. Well, this, I think, I will not spend more time here, but really to say that knowledge was most of 20th century. Then in the end, skills started to come in, and now academia is starting to recognize the importance of attitude. And I believe a good education in school, I can tell you, whether at Ashoka or at Plaksha, I mean, the new Technology Leaders Fellowship that we run, a key component of the fellowship is about attitude, and it does wonders to the students. The self-confidence, ability to communicate, grit that they develop when they graduate, and that really takes them up and, really helps them shine. Next, Ganesh, if you can move. This one also, I think I've spoken of. I realize I'm taking more time. But really, I think data embedded everywhere. And in the new university that I'm involved in building, Plaksha, we do believe that data and digital has to be core at every discipline, it is in some manner the new liberal arts, digital literacy and your comfort with data. And I strongly believe that, and we are surprised, and schools and counselors and students should get surprised by their own comfort to be able to deal with this. My last slide, in some sense, how do you counsel through this crisis? And this is especially true for students who are joining in 2020. I am very happy advising students take a gap year, take a break, right? Go with the flow. And what does that mean? I think the colleges and school administrators and owners are far more worried than students, and they should be. How do you open schools and colleges in 20? Students have nothing to worry. Students should go with the advice that your colleges, if your colleges are telling you, hey, look, do this semester online, do that online. There's nothing to worry. You have 4 more years to go, 3 more years to go, right? If they are telling you take a gap year, be open to doing that, right? Invest in yourself, learn, reinvent, delve in your interests, and don't create more uncertainty for yourself by taking more risks, right? I always believe that students who are 20, 18 are going to be working for 50 years of their lives. There is no hurry to graduate 6 months earlier. right? If you take another 6 months and 1 year to invest in yourself, there is absolutely no harm. So, really be open and do the things you've always wanted to do. 2021 will definitely be better. So students, at least who've come into class 12, have little to worry about. Take this year the way it goes. If half of your classes happen online, that's fine. Do invest. If you are home, do invest your time in physical exercise. I do believe physical exercise is the antidote to mental health. So do invest your time in physical exercise. Do invest your time learning. And finally, 2022 and after will be better. So people in grades 9, 10, you have nothing to worry, right? Life is going to come back the way it was in different forms with new mediums of learning. And we all would have discovered some outstanding things in the next 6 months and in the next 1 year. So treat it as an opportunity to learn new things, to develop yourself, and to really go with the flow. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity and for listening. Back to you, Ganesh.
Over to you, Lata ma'am. I think we're doing well so far. And please, thank you, Vineet, for those thoughts. Lata ma'am.
Yeah. So thank you, Ganesh. If I have to follow Ganesh's wisdom and Vineet's complete statement on education, I think all that needs to be heard and said is actually done. But let me look at the problem a little differently from the point of view of school. Because when we talk about schools, it is about age group that's K-12. And careers these days, as we mentioned, comes right from where they begin, because everything is visible to the educators. I sometimes wonder how 1 gram of the virus disrupted the entire system and shut down the world. But while all shut down, like whether it is the tourism industry, the travel industry, the food, the malls, whatever, including the schools, academics continue. That is the resilience of the teachers. I think that's why I said that when we are going to now look at education fresh in a slightly different way, not to be cowed down by anything or any challenges that come our way, we need to look at the whole process all over again in a very systematic manner and design education to work on real life problems. Here is an opportunity to change the perspective, as Ganesh said some time back, and take it on from there. When I say this, I think, we say let's focus on what makes education different, because the focus is now on very personalized learning. We call it purposeful and professional only because the environment of learning has changed, and what seems to be just a team of children or a group of children in a level playing field inside the classroom is now not face to face, but not one to one. And therefore, when we sit down to talk about education, the ecosystem in which the learning is happening has changed. We call it purposeful because the most important thing is that it presents this difficult time, actually presents to us that life is unpredictable. And how can we shift the focus from just pure learning, as schools are believed to be more purposeful in the sense that we are now catering and drawing children's attention to what is so unpredictable in life. And therefore, the quality of learning and the content of learning has to be really different so that they are more prepared to face these uncertain times. And it is also professionally different because teachers will have to acquire new skills, which they have actually done. Within a week, I think the entire country was able to respond to it and take on and learn as they went on the newer skills that were required for professional dissemination of whatever they chose to do and change the canvas. Now, obviously, it involved people and processes. And when we talk of people and processes, I think we need to realize that it's no longer within the class, and people would mean all the stakeholders, and suddenly everybody is launching onto this digital platform, and therefore the focus is now moving on to an online from an offline, and people are comparing and saying, okay, between online and offline, it is something like watching a movie and watching a play. So there are stark differences, and yet the whole process is on. So the difference in the medium in which the transaction is happening was challenging enough, but I think everybody responded to it and not just reacted, as Ganesh was saying some time back. And this response was truly encouraging for the entire educational system. Now, when we look at the process, because the processes are based on the digital ways of life, we had to move on. Can I have the next slide? In which there is a complete redefinition of rules. You know, the students now have to take responsibility for their own learning. And it presented to them a different platform where the teachers encouraged them, for example, to search and research in whatever ways they were learning, whichever subject they were learning. And that gave them an opportunity very clearly to find their own calling. Because when they were searching and researching, they knew what they were skilled at and what was important for them in learning for life and living, which was very important to them. You know, each teacher then became a counselor as well. And that is where I think all that Vineet spoke about, the value systems, the resilience, the complete knowledge of how you live and how you respond to any challenges that are around you comes forth, and the whole focus shifted along with the teachers and the guidance counselors, which I think most of the schools have now. Yet, I would think that the responsibility lies with both of them. When we talk of guidance counselors, as rightly was pointed out by Vineet, as also the teachers, the digital platform offers them a lot more. And if we expect students to search and research into their interests, into their subjects, I think teachers also need to use their subjects to let children know that the world is their oyster, and that there are a lot of things that they can do with their lives, and they need to look for their interests, and each subject that they study in school or each way in which they approach the subject, whether it be a project-based approach or an experiential way of learning, there is something for them where they can identify how they resonate with the skills that are available, and therefore, what is the direction forward, and which I think, aided ably by the guidance counselors within schools, will be able to clearly give them a pathway to search and research into this. The schools will also therefore take on responsibility and look at the renewed focus that we have. The next slide. And in the renewed focus, I was looking at this communication that is with all stakeholders. It's very interesting now that what used to be a classroom as now all stakeholders present in the same platform. For example, your parents, students, teachers, all available at the same time. And it seems like a one-to-one communication where the quality of all that is being said, heard, learnt, and seen, and researched and searched through this extremely brilliant digital platform, which is endless resource for whatever they want to do, is now beginning to take shape. They are looking at a new way of communicating with themselves and with others, and finding enough, so much material that probably now the teacher's job is to handhold and make sure that they're able to analyze the data that's available to them and move higher on the Bloom's taxonomy to make sure that they have found it. Of course, planning happens to it. I think the teachers need to link curriculum to their careers. Exploring at the schooling level, it's very interesting that today, the fact that they are online and the digital resources available to them makes it that much more easier to begin the process and streamline everything regarding their careers right from grade 9 with additional focus. To understand their attributes, to understand their interests, to look at which way they want to move forward, and also verify and explore and evaluate and engage with the children deeply in order to give them a way forward. If I look at the further partnerships in this, I think this is really time for children to sit down, and because they'll have this additional time in their hands, and as rightly pointed by Vineet and others, that, if they have to take a gap year, there are enough courses now that they know what they're interested in, they can take online and make sure that that will lead them forward to something more meaningful in terms of their career and search. Now, there are ways in which we can probably do it. Yes, the next slide, please. I think that this new landscape of skills and careers for the next decade is clearly about very, very personalized approach, because if you love what you do, perhaps you don't have to work, and therefore you're doing what you love. And this time that we have at hand, the schools have at hand, it looks like that there is more that can be accomplished. Therefore, if we focus on how careers and guidance need to move forward, I think the departments in every school, I would strongly recommend, both in the Indian scenario and perhaps outside of India, that I think we need to strengthen our careers and counseling department, and each school needs to have one, and not mix it up with other counselors who are dealing with just behavioral problems or special education. And therefore, I wish we have a scenario where the Department of Counseling, Careers and others would have more than 5 to 10 people to make it possible for children to really explore it in detail. Whether it is through expert talks, because now it's possible. We don't really have to wait for people to travel and come across. In every line of specialization and in professions and careers that look significantly different in the years to come from what we have had now, and they look so interdisciplinary and so multisensorial, that I think they need to look at it completely fresh, and maybe organize virtual university visits, encourage parents to sit down and deal with it, have career fairs, because everything is possible online. Get teams of schools together to work together, counselors to work together. Also make sure that we are able to be great advocates with our regulators and governments to not only involve privileged people of our society, but all of them, because everyone needs a career in this very, very unpredictable world. I think, as regards what makes that human being so resilient in times of crisis is the business of the schools to make sure that they will have it. Because I, being an old timer, actually believe that the schools will come back and there will be personal time with each one of them. It's going to be a mixed one. It's going to be a blended form of learning, because the new normal is not going to be the same. But that certainly is going to make all the difference in the research that the children and the entire educational system will respond to. With these, I think, Ganesh.
Thank you, Lata ma'am. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm going to the last set of slides with Geeta, and then we'll be ready to take questions. So if you have some coming along, you can keep typing those out and we'll be ready to take questions. If you have it for a specific panelist, please post them here as well. Geeta?
Thank you, Ganesh. It was wonderful to listen to Vineet and Lata as well. They just, mapped a blueprint for what schools should be doing, and probably to a great extent, the advice what they were talking about, we have had them as actionable items. So before I just go into what we did to handle the crisis, just wanted to quickly give you all a glimpse of what our school is all about. We are a
Geeta, we've lost your video, Geeta. If you want to just switch on your video.
Yeah,
I could see her.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So just wanted to say that we are a K-12 school offering the 3 international programs, the Montessori, the Cambridge pathway, as well as the IBDP. So, and we believe that our students need to have an educational experience which is stimulating, engaging, and authentic. So ever since the lockdown was announced, what we saw is we had to think very strategically. We had to initiate some short-term measures, devise some long-term strategies, arrive at new norms, so that learning was never compromised. So I was a counselor for many years, which is very, very close to my heart. But today, just heading a school, you can see both the spectrum, and we just have to see that, such a pivotal role the counselors play in our school, and how as heads of school we are able to address issues so that we can probably promote aspects which they can do it beautifully. So we suddenly, when this aspect hit us, we started saying we had to reconstruct schooling overnight. The lexicon of teaching and learning suddenly seemed to be changing, and we didn't have the benefit of a predictability of the past, where we all started feeling that we were in a no man's land of learning. So with all these uncertainties, what we started feeling is, okay, who are getting impacted? Of course, we as a school, we were making sure that our teachers were learning, they were reskilling themselves, and we had a very, very resilient team. And they were just very agile and adaptable, which we are very proud of. But with all this, so I would like to break my aspect into the high school level, coming to what was the class of 2020 going through. So there was this uncertainty of exams which happened. It could be the CBSE, it could be the ICSE, it could be the state board, but even the international boards, what we started seeing is there was suddenly an uncertainty which came up. Would the IB exams happen? Would the Cambridge exams happen? So post that, I think for the first time, IB had to cancel the exams which they've never done in the past. So, when that comes in, how does the grades look like? So children were flooded with so much of an uncertainty. And we as educators had to make sure that we had to be empathetic. We had to be supportive to understand, how are we going to be supporting them during that time. The children, so even today, I think the lot of questions which children have right now is, how would my IB grades come out? Because IB right now is basing it on the IA, which just was about 20-30% with a predicted grade. Would that match to what I would have done if I had 2 months of study time and get the grade? Because based on that, I'm sitting on a conditional offer at an Imperial or a Cambridge, any of these. So when children having these issues is, there is that uncertainty, and as educators, what are we doing about it? So also children sitting, and what you see is now children have suddenly started feeling, which they were very sure. I know once the moment the lockdown is released, children are waiting to pack the suitcase and leave. There's absolutely no question which they wouldn't be doing. But there is this option where there is the family, where, there's probably at a time where they're saying, okay, do you think you want to defer it? So children sitting with offers from some of the top universities have probably been considering that, okay, should we defer a university offer? But there also comes an uncertainty, because certain universities are saying that, okay, if you defer, you should not be taking admission somewhere else. You should be having the offer at hand, and you can take a gap year, that's fine. So what do they do with the gap year? So gap year uncertainties are also there at this stage, because you see when a child so many of my kids used to use the gap year to travel, have a cultural immersion, or probably do some internships which probably were more hands-on. So those opportunities probably wouldn't be as diverse or as accessible now. So gap year probably, but what we have done as a school is we have tried to make sure that we have tried to connect them with alumni. So alumni do understand, because they understand the school culture, they understand what these children want. So there are options which they are allowing them and helping them and supporting them to do online virtual internships available. So those are beautiful aspects which we would recommend college counselors as well as school heads to explore those opportunities. We've also tried to make sure that children have access to virtual admissions, which many of the universities have started exploring. We as a school are very, very, suddenly we see our mailbox full of so many classes which are happening by lots of universities, and we do see deep value to that. So what, like you have from Ajib Premji in India, or you have Flame, and one of the beautiful sessions which happens is by virtual master classes, which is called the Beyond the Classroom, if I'm not wrong. And I personally follow them every Wednesday, every Monday, every Wednesday and every Saturday. And they are by Ashoka universities. I still remember the Masala Shakespeare, by Jonathan Gill, who comes up and he gives us such a beautiful analogy, and he's connecting Bollywood with Shakespeare, which I couldn't even think of, or remembering Bapu. So those aspects, when you see, you say, wow, these are aspects which we can continue to have learning to happen. But once, of course, we are also in discussion with the universities. How are universities? We're keeping a close watch. Like Stanford says, once we open, we are going to have classes in tens. So we said, okay, fine. So that's one aspect where parents start feeling, all right, there is a certain amount of social distancing which would be managed. Again, we are appealing to the universities to say, what are you doing once the lockdown gets over? Children have to go in for visas. If we could seek their advice and support to say that if you could open additional counters, if they could talk to the immigration and visa of officials to open some additional counters. So those aspects we're looking at. And also we are asking the universities to create certain community bonds, because the moment children would get into a university, they generally get an affinity is created depending on what interests I have. If child is musician, he loves Bollywood, or he loves sports. So if they can identify that through the college applications which have been submitted, and you create those small communities and you encourage them to network. So for example, you're just saying somebody who's a marathon runner, and you have children across the world, in Japan, in Europe, India, and if all of them, you can identify and create opportunities that they're all doing a marathon on one day, and you're creating. So those special bonds would be created even before they enter the campus, whenever the universities open up. So these are some aspects we are looking for a class of 2020. And also just wanted all of you to pay attention to the pictures on my slides. All these have been created by my children across from middle school to high school. All the images are not something from the net, but these children have created as a response to the COVID. And I'll tell you a story about it eventually. Next slide, please. So class of 2020, I know there are those. What are we doing about 21? So of course, 21 is also, applications are opening up very soon. So they again, like SAT, cancel. So yeah, day before yesterday's paper, or the news which I was following, which says that College Board probably, they had said that there could be an option of testing at home, but looks like day before yesterday, it says that might not happen. And College Board is probably making an appeal to the universities to say, don't be too harsh and just wait. As and when children test, probably take them on. So those aspects we are very, very closely watching. And we also see our children, some of them are getting in and say, no test. They're all getting into a movement that probably this policy which College Board or universities were looking at, is this a time for them to change and look at college applications more holistically? We are also, as a school, we are encouraging a lot of virtual campus tours, which is happening from KIC or from British Council. So lots of those options, we are making it accessible for our children. One more aspect, I don't know, this is a very personal thing which I have seen, that would this be, because there are these whole discussions with this post-COVID, how would the colleges survive this? But we do see a potential for community colleges to probably mushroom, because, especially with this economic aspect which has hit the parent, do you think that community colleges probably would have a scope because they're more accessible financially? So those are something which we are watching out for. But there's again a whole lot of children and especially parents who are looking at options that safety and tuition. So are there opportunities in the country here itself? So we do have Ashokas, we have Premji, we have Flame, but I think as a country, we need many, many more to suffice and to make sure. And if Plaksha is coming, we are happy. And Mr. Vineet, we would say open many more. We will have lots of kids joining and staying here. So another one done by my grade 11 kid. You can see the painting there. So next slide, please.
Okay, Geeta, I'm just going to point to you that we're completely running out of time for questions. Oh. We only have 11 minutes. Okay. So there are, for the panelists, there are some questions in the Q&A here. If you can just click on it and answer, there are some specific ones for Vineet, Lata ma'am, others. But if you can wrap this up, and then I will bring a couple of questions from the list, Geeta.
Sure. Just give me 1 more minute. That's it. I will close it. Yes. So we also said, as a school, what did we do? We created 3 opportunities. I won't get into what we as a school did, but we wanted to initiate that as students. We have a tie-up with UN, And as a part of that UN, our kids created website as a UNODC. As part of it, you can see that the first time we had a cyber chief who came in and addressed all our children. And kids have created a website which probably is talking about. So we have a middle school kids creating a lot of stuff for the world at large, as well as the university, the higher grade children taking care. So I will probably post the website link here. We won't have time to get into the details, and maybe at any point you can link it. And if anybody wishes to connect with, again, UN in different ways, ping me and I will definitely share the details with you. So on this, I know it's short. I would have loved to speak more, but thank you very much.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And I'm not sure if our panelists can access the Q&A button, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. These are some of our...
We can see the questions, Ganesh, and we can go in whichever order you suggest.
Yeah. I am going to call out the questions. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. Wonderful. So I do have a separate tab where they're posting the most all right. Okay. I think we're here. Vineet, you want to take one while I figure this out here? Hang on. There was one for you on virtual internships. Are they going to be valid in these unprecedented times?
I think so, absolutely. I think any unique experiences that students create in the summer are going to be so valuable. What can you do for the community in these times? These are unprecedented. I had a student who was, while there are so many communities taking care of people, this particular child was trying to take care of street animals, giving, just making sure they have water. I think anything, extracurricular activity, internships, always define character, and whatever students do in these times will differentiate themselves. So absolutely.
Yeah. So Pushparaj has a question. How do you address the challenges of access and affordances of many children of working class people? So I think this is a really broad subject, and I could see, Pushparaj, you also asked a question on access to technology, and those numbers are actually alarming. If you see the numbers in India, there was a report by the Azim Premji Foundation recently, and less than 24% of the population had access to a computer, which was what you would need. And in most cases, that computer was not accessible to a student. That was, only accessible to the family. So you've got a serious challenge, and I completely, relate to what you're saying about how do we work virtually when there is a lack of connectivity and a lack of the fundamental resource. And even among access to mobile phones, smartphones are only, are much lesser. I don't have the percentage here offhand, but there is, Vineet, you probably have that number, or Lata ma'am, but it's less than 11% of the families that have a smartphone, and that too is not accessible to a student. So yes, those challenges are severe, and we're actually doing a conference in partnership with Ashoka tomorrow and day after on reopening schools and the COVID K-12 situation. So you are welcome to, attend and look at some sessions. I'm also running a session on opening schools during the COVID era. I'm going to move on and look at Hannah's question. This may be relevant for Geeta to take on. what would be the scope of students going abroad in these difficult times? What can be done to encourage students to stick to their original plans? How can we help them? When can we expect CBSE results, as our prep session is in August? So between Geeta and Lata ma'am, Geeta, you want to go first, and then Lata ma'am can talk about the CBSE results bit.
Sure. So how are we going to be supporting kids and making sure that they keep the preference alive? So what we are doing is, of course, they need the assurance. So we as a school are making sure that we are in touch with the universities themselves and ensuring that we get some confirmation from them in terms of what measures do they have, because if we have to tell them that this is, you can go for it, we should be doubly sure that the safety of our children is going to be taken care of. So that's done, and then we have conversation with the children and parents to make sure that they are 100% sure of taking these options. And we see children, whoever has got an offer from some of the top ones, they are still sticking to it. Some where, okay, you see there are those options, we are exploring opportunities back home as well. So that just reassures them that that's not the end of the world.
Lata ma'am, when can we expect CBSE results as our...
I think the CBSE results should be out by July end. That's what we are getting to hear from people. So I think the authorities have also said so, because July again from 1st to 15th, there are those exams which will be conducted, which have not been conducted in many parts of the country. So after that, the results, but we are hoping that they wanted to speed it up and say by end of July, the results would be there, which somehow I'm not feeling very comfortable about. But as far as these admissions are concerned, I think some of the parents who got back to us on people who have got offers, they have asked for deferred admissions for a year, which obviously takes me to the fact that probably this year, even if things get better, parents are very suspicious of sending their children out given the current COVID state. So they are willing to stay back. And if they are willing to stay back, they're also looking at getting admissions in some of the local universities, which I think a lot of them, I know personally, are there with Vineet, who are waiting there, because they feel that when compared to a traditional university, they'll be closer in their skills going to Ashoka and the likes.
I'm going to take one last question because we are completely running out of time here, and make a closing comment. This is coming from Peter, who's based out of the US. Given the circumstances, the fact that many universities will inundate high school counselors in India and beyond to get a space access to the kids, what is your recommendation for those of us who are looking to inspire these young minds to consider international education? Geeta?
Ganesh, sorry, I lost you. I'm so sorry. I couldn't hear you. I just had a network issue. Could you just quickly repeat? Sorry.
Okay, what would be one... So given the circumstances and the fact that many universities will inundate high school counselors in India and beyond to get a space access to the kids, what is your recommendation for those of us who are looking to inspire these young students to continue considering international education?
We say that I think effective collaboration and shared communication and adaptive leadership is going to be the magic to make sure that children would continue to be inspired to take the decision and continue with what they have. A complete collaboration with the universities, the parent, and the school. So the 360-degree aspect is very, very important at this stage in time.
Yeah, and I think, Peter, students are craving for content that's relevant. So you have, they might not want to know so much about admissions, but they might want to know about a subject area. And if you can help schools have multiple areas, they need some professional development for their teachers. So many times recruitment becomes about engaging with the student. I would say holistically engaging with the school, empowering their teachers, doing a workshop for teachers at a school, and those kind of activities would really be helpful as well. I'm afraid we've completely run out of time. We will try and address some of these other questions that we haven't been able to separately. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here. This was the first IC3 Live webinar. We hope to have many more. We also have our next set of events that are coming up. And just as I speak, ic3live.com has just gone up. The website is now live. So if you would want to just have a sneak peek, please do keep watch out for other IC3 Live events. We've got numerous events. We've got keynotes. We've got presidential panels for school leaders. And you've got a university exhibit. So if you are at a university, you can actually meet with counselors and principals like Geeta or Lata ma'am, who will come around and meet you in your rooms and have a lot of these questions answered. So you actually have a virtual platform where you'd have a video conversation individually. So that's the next event coming up on the 1st of July. I just want to say thank you again to our panelists, Vineet, Lata ma'am, Geeta, thank you very much for joining us on this first IC3 Live event. And we promise to keep getting better and stronger with time. We are in unknown territory as well as IC3. And we're really, we've enjoyed having all of you here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.